Welcome to the Caretakers, a show where we'll talk about what it means to be a caretaker on Earth. Whether we're intentional about it or not, we're all caretakers. We've been entrusted to take care of our family, our friends, our environment, and ourselves. We'll talk about strategies for taking care of yourself, mentally, physically, and spiritually. We'll talk about what it means to take care of others, from your neighbor across the street to the neighbor across the globe. This is going to be a journey of self-discovery and reflection, and we hope you join us as we strive to be the best caretakers we can be. So I sat and I thought for a while about how to introduce you. And I'm not saying this in any exaggerating way. I don't know that there's an introduction that would adequately describe you because you've touched so many different things. And so I'm going to give some of our listeners a bit of background so that they understand where you're coming from when you speak. But I want you to understand as a listener that you are simply seeing a layer or two of somebody who has really dedicated their life to serving their community and humanity as a whole. And so, we're honored today to have Dr. Munir El-Kassem with us. He is a retired dentist and professor of dentistry here in London. He's been an Imam and a leader in the city longer than I've been alive, much longer than I've been alive. He's been a part of this community, and this is something that I think is unique to you. You've been a part of the community in every stage of our lives. And so I have seen you speak at aqiqas, a celebration of someone's birth, and I've seen you speak at people's burials and everything in between, whether it's marriage or whatever life events. He's married hundreds of couples here in London, maybe more. He's guided thousands through their pilgrimage to Mecca and Medina. He's counseled couples facing difficulties in their marriage, youth having trouble with their parents, and again, everything in between. And his audio and video tapes on various Islamic lectures have been widely distributed, so not just here in London. His impact goes, to local TV in different countries. In particular, there's a show called The Matter of Life and Death that you put together. He's been recognized with many medals and awards, amongst them the Diamond and Golden Jubilee Awards and the Outstanding Volunteerism Award in the province of Ontario. And most importantly for me, he's my childhood Imam. So for as long as I can remember, he's been leading the way for me and many others, including, Allahumma barik, his 6 children.
Yes.
5 daughters and 1 boy. And now, with his experience, he's also built an online presence, starting a YouTube channel called Jido Munir. So, like I said, this is 1 or 2 layers of how deep it goes. So we're honored to have you, Dr. Munir.
Jazakallah khair for hosting me on this podcast that I came to be aware of, not too long ago. And, as I continue to do what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows me to do, there are some, young leaders that I admire. And it's not because I'm on your podcast. I said it to you before. I said it to your father. I said it to people who just know you from a distance, that you are one of those people that when the time comes for me to continue my journey of life, I will feel that, there are people who will continue the journey that I started. And, Basil, it's funny that, as you get busy doing what you just mentioned, you don't think of these things as achievements. Right. You think of them as responsibilities. And, the kind of things that you mentioned, I always feel that, there's something missing that I would like to do. And as such, what is called a free time does not exist in my life. And
right.
This is one thing that my wife and my children, at times beg me to, Baba, please slow down.
Right.
And if I do, I feel very uncomfortable. So I just ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give me that stamina to continue with
Ameen.
what I love to do, inshallah.
Ameen. And we are the beneficiaries of that.
Well, I hope so. And you mentioned something that actually only yesterday, how the roller coaster of emotions that one is required to ride in this life. Yesterday, I had to rush from what is called in our Palestinian culture as the jaha. I was asked to go with a young man to go and ask for the hand of a young lady from our community. And on the way, I received the phone call of, another household who lost, a young man. And I had to really rush from one place to another. And before that, I was at a walima of a young man, as you mentioned yourself, as the Imam of my childhood. It's funny that I was introduced as the Imam of that young person, since his childhood. He, without me realizing that, he mentioned examples that he could really relate to, and things that sometimes trespass your memory and you stop thinking about them. But subhanallah, yesterday was one such example of how I'm jumping from one thing to another to another. And at the end of the day, I just thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for keeping me on top of things and able to switch from one mood to another, not to show different faces, but without doing that, we will not be doing the right service to the people who expect you to be in a certain mood when they are welcoming you into their household.
Right. And I mean, on that service, that concept of service, I think has been something that I can't imagine this is something that happened suddenly in your life. This must have been something that came from childhood or from very young age. Do you remember, that concept of service being instilled in you from your parents, or where did it come from?
You see, I was born in Lebanon to a Palestinian father and a Lebanese mother. And I grew up in the capital of Lebanon. And one thing that defined my childhood, and now looking at it, I relate many of the things I'm doing right now to something that I cannot get into the details of because it will take 5 podcasts. But I have to tell you, and you can cut me off anytime you want, but I will try my very best to tell you. I was 11 years old, and I was at an Islamic institute called Al-Maqasid.
Yes.
That shaped my Islamic identity. And, we were very close to the Arab University of Beirut. And students from that university used to come to the masjid, which is attached to our school. And, one zealous, religious university student gathered 5 of us, hoping to increase our Islamic commitment by telling us extra things. But subhanallah, at the time, we listened, and now I say he was sincere, but he was not a good teacher.
Okay.
Because, for 6 weeks since he started, I started to develop nightmares because he taught an 11 years old boy that if you do not pray on time, if you do not do your religious duties faithfully, if you do not do this, you do not do that, look what he connected it with. When you die, your grave will squeeze you, and there will be the blue serpent and the red serpent that will circle your body, and you will suffocate. Telling someone who is dead that they will suffocate, I don't know what an oxymoron that was. But anyway, that terrified me as a child. And that left its marks on me, that now when I talk to children, I have to remember how children think. When I talk to youth, I have to put myself in their shoes. And so what happened, I became so terrified of death and Islam that leads to death. And I started to have nightmares. I started to be scared of hearing the adhan even. I would put my fingers in my ears and I would run away if I see a janazah, because there they have janazah processions. They will take it, not by cars. Later on they started to use cars. But anyway, I became so terrified. So for 6 years after that, I stopped practicing Islam.
Subhanallah.
And this is something that people may not know.
Right.
But my parents were very wise. They did not force me into anything. They took me to imams, they took me to psychiatrists, they took me to psychologists, they took me to counselors, And finally, what happened after I stopped practicing, I was accepted as the top student to the medical program at the American University of Beirut. And this is one thing I would like to mention now. Later it may mean something to the listeners, that I was the top student throughout my education in every year. And academically, I felt a commitment that I needed to maintain that standard. So when I got into the American University of Beirut, into the medical program, we had 4 half courses called Cultural Studies, CS 201, 202, 203, 204. I still remember that. Now, 203 and 204 were in comparative religion. And so I ended up studying all religions from an academic perspective. And the last, faith tradition was Islam. So I started to learn it academically, and slowly that started to help me to get rid of my fears that were instilled of me by a zealous teacher who was not a good teacher. So slowly that started to help me, but it did not end up there, because the civil war in Lebanon started, and 3 years into my university education, my parents decided to leave and come to Canada. So I had to leave with them, because it was extremely expensive to go to medical school at the American University of Beirut. And my father was a carpenter. He had very, very limited income. And I say it with pride that we were not from a wealthy family. My father was poor. We lived decently, but with dignity. And so I had to come with my parents. We came and we landed in London, Ontario. And I went to, Western University. And I told them, I'm, in medical school and I want to continue in medicine. And said, okay, where are your transcripts? I didn't get any, because my microfiche at the AUB got burnt during the war. So I didn't have any records. And so they said, okay, we will let you write the entrance exam. And if you do well, we will accept you in first year science.
So you're starting.
I lost 5 years. Okay. Now I'm saying, at that time I said I lost it, but now everything, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shaped it for a purpose.
Right.
Because, I redid 4 years of genetics. I got my BSc, then I went into a master's program, in medical genetics. And every year I was applying into medicine. And even though my average was in the 90s, I did not gain entry into the medical program at Schulich. It wasn't called Schulich in those days. Later it became called Schulich Medicine and Dentistry. But later I went to meet the Dean of Students at medical school here in London. And I said, Dr. Watson, I still remember his name, I have the highest average you can think of.
Right.
So how come? And his answer was, he said, Mr. El-Kassem, we know you are very busy in your community, because I was at that time the chair of the board of directors at the London Muslim Mosque.
Oh, wow.
You know, I got so involved
Yeah.
in the community right from day one. And I will take you, in a minute to the time when I arrived in London. But he said, we know you are very busy. Why did they know about me being busy? Because in 1979, it was the, revolution in Iran. And everybody was excited about, Islam now, no Sunni, no Shia. It was just something new. And I was interviewed on 6XFM at Fanshawe and, the London Free Press and
Right.
CJBK. And, so everybody heard about this young chair of the board of directors of the only mosque in London, London Muslim Mosque. So I knew that there was a correlation established between my Islamic activity and my gaining entry into medical school. So after I finished my master's, I applied into dentistry because I was getting older. So I wanted to do dentistry because it did not need residency. It did not need any of that. So I basically applied in Toronto.
Right.
I got accepted into the dental program at U of T, and I finished dentistry, and then I started my journey practicing dentistry for 33 years. And then I was asked to join the faculty here at Western in the dental school. And I did that for 10 years. And then something happened. And, if you're interested, I can tell you later. But I, left Western to go back again into private practice. And then finally, my heart said, wait a minute. Your heart is not in dentistry. Your heart is in Islamic da'wah. So I made that difficult decision, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helped me, and I'll tell you how He helped me to do that, because in 1999 I developed a condition in my eye. Usually it is, bilateral, but subhanallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted it to be unilateral so that I will continue doing what I'm doing. It's called keratoconus, which is a condition in the cornea of the eye. So I was unable to tell depth, so I couldn't practice. So they asked me to go and teach dentistry instead of practicing. I did that, and then I came back, to private practice because something happened in Hamilton, and I was able to resume my sight. And but then my heart said, no, go to Islamic da'wah. So I made that bold decision to quit dentistry and continue in the field of da'wah. Now, I promise that I will tell you when I first arrived, how did I regain my love for my deen and my attempt at sharing it with others. 3 months after arriving in London, the London Muslim Mosque, where it is now, on Fridays, we barely could finish a line behind the Imam. Wow. Barely. So one day, an old man who probably was the oldest man who settled in London, his name was Ahmed al-Sayyid. He, out of the blues, he comes to me and says, Munir, you seem like an educated young man. Why don't you lead us, in Friday prayer next week? Now, one thing that made me answer swiftly with a sure, why not? That made me, after I made that answer, come back to myself, say, what did I say?
What have I done?
What did I do? I don't have what it takes, because, I'm fresh coming out of, a shock to my existence, for 7 years. And then I tried to come out of it. And now I'm coming to a new landscape that helped me to get rid of my fear of Islam and, all of that. But one thing made me say yes, because in Lebanon, I was again the top student in Lebanon in public speaking. There used to be competitions, and, everybody recognized that for about 10 years, I was number one in Lebanon, and everybody recognized that. So I thought when he said, give the Friday khutbah, I thought it's public speaking.
Right.
So let me continue to exercise my talent in public speaking, but then where will you get the content?
Right.
But I had a few books, and I kept writing and tearing pages, and, but anyway, I worked very hard, and I persisted, and I said, no, I have to prove it. And that was how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, shaped my childhood, and made me go through that phase of rejecting everything, then choosing Islam, after realizing that it is the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And by studying all the religions, I became, in those early days in my existence in Canada, go to churches, because in those early days, they wanted to know more about Islam. I visited churches, schools, University of Western Ontario, Fanshawe College. Then I went outside of London. I participated in conferences, in Islamic summer camps. And, so all of that, I would say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shaped it for me without me, as it was being shaped, realizing that وَعَسَى أَن تَكْرَهُوا شَيْئًا وَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ وَأَنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. That you may dislike something in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts lots of goodness for you. Allah knows, because Allah knows the future. I did not know.
Right.
I still don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted me to realize my potential in a profession. First it started as medicine, then it went into medical genetics, then it went into dentistry, to show me that even though you excelled in it, but your heart was pulling you in a different direction. So now I do not regret having, done what I did in the field of medicine and dentistry, but now I feel that I am sharing what my heart, asked me to share.
Right. And I want to talk about the future a little bit. So you mentioned the future, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one who knows the future.
Absolutely.
We can try, based on what we see today, to make some predictions and to take us from those times where you're talking about, where you're praying Jum'ah, you're praying the Friday prayer, and you can't barely fill a line at the LMM, to now there's something like 13 masajid in the city. I think they said something like 8,000 people were praying Taraweeh this past Ramadan.
Even more than that. On the day of the 27th of Ramadan, Sheikh Adnan Rajih started a survey among the Imams, and each one, gave the numbers of the people, the estimate, and it was close to 15,000 people that night, and 15,000, in a city like London. Subhanallah, it made me reflect on the question that you just asked me.
Right.
I said, Ya Allah, did I even imagine in those days that a time will come? Did I even imagine that I will continue to be alive 47 years after arriving in London, Ontario? Will I be able to imagine that there will be 13 places to offer Jumu'ah? The answer is no.
Right.
The answer is no. We did not even imagine the quality of young leadership that will take us into the future. At times we even were at the verge of losing hope, but then we will be reminded by what the Quran tells us, that those who lose hope are equivalent to those who lose faith. لا تقنطوا من رحمة الله. Don't ever do that, Because if you do, then you are losing faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who shapes things, and He's the one who is the creator of cause effect. We may think that we are making decisions,
Right.
but it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who's guiding us, and that is why now when I, at every speech where it is relevant, I mention, that example of the relay race that in Olympics, they have it a team of 4 players or racers on every team, and the first one is holding a baton and then is running at the top of his or her speed, holding this baton, and as he or she starts to decelerate, the second one is starting to accelerate, and he hands over that baton, and the condition is, if the baton falls on the ground, the entire team is disqualified.
Right.
And then the baton is given, the first person stops after decelerating, the other one now is racing at the top of his speed, doing it to the third and the fourth. So when the fourth one reaches the finish line, it's the entire team that is a winner.
Absolutely.
Okay, and that's how I see it now, that as I am decelerating, I'm hoping that when I will hand over the baton, I will not make it fall. Because if I will rush what that teacher when I was 11 years old, I still remember, and I say, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward him. Because through his sincerity and lack of educational abilities, he created in me an understanding of how I can share Islam with others,
Right.
as I said earlier. So that was not in vain. It was done for a purpose. So that's why I'm hoping that when Basil will continue, when Adnan Rajih will continue, when Arij Anwar will continue, when I'm seeing those leaders, and when I'm seeing the wellness center becoming a hub for youthful programs, I get so excited, so happy, because there are places that are attracting more of the older generations than others. And even though I'm still, so excited about Islam with Jido Munir, Islam with Uncle Munir, and I still, have programs with children and youth, but I do believe that in a city like London, specialization and allocating specialties to different centers is the best way to efficiently carrying on what is a community-based responsibility.
Right.
Now, there's no point in reinventing the wheel at the Islamic Center if the Wellness Center is doing it well. And that's why I have to, I feel it like probably the oldest serving Imam in age, that I carry that responsibility, and whenever there's a chance to share my experience, I will not hesitate to do that.
Absolutely. And I think the key to take away from that is, we talk about this growth from when you started to where we are today. The key is, I think, and as somebody reflecting back, you weren't worried about the outcome.
That's right.
You were focused on the service, and you leave the outcome to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So for us that are carrying that baton now, forget about the outcome. The outcome, you have no control over the outcome anyways, and you're worrying about something you have no control over.
Don't get disqualified.
Right.
That's it. Don't let the baton fall. And then leave the, whether you will win the race or not, leave it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Right.
Okay. So my worry is about 2 things: that I will run at the top of my speed, and I will not let that baton fall. So this is what I'd like to see. Now, when I say run at the top of the speed, please, for the listeners, I hope they do not take the message that we need to always do things quickly and no, because it is a race. The example I gave is of a race. The subject matter of the race is speed.
Right.
So that's why I said at the top of the, but there are things where we really need to take our time if we need the best outcome. So that's what we should worry about, what we are doing, and leave the outcome to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's it.
Beautiful. I want to ask you about marriage, change it up a little bit.
Okay.
So do you know how many people you've married? An estimate?
An estimate, if I have the records with me, yeah. I would say, by the way, I am the oldest serving marriage officer with the province of Ontario of all faith traditions. Longest serving. I've been a marriage officer for 44 years.
Yeah.
So for 44 years, I would estimate close to 1,000.
Close to 1,000
couples. Yes.
And I'm not sure if you still do this, but there was a time I remember where in order for you to marry two people, you required them to do a marriage prep course.
Let me correct that thing. It was an idea that continues to be an idea.
Okay.
But I, at the London Council of Imams, I proposed that, and we are still studying the feasibility of making this a condition, because the reason I proposed that years back is that I witnessed the rising trend in separation and divorce among Muslim couples that quickly was matching the provincial rate. And that was alarming. And it continues to rise. And the reason, because there was a time when I documented and I wrote until I had a huge backlog of notes that I could not put them in my confidential records, because I wanted to establish scientific study to understand what's the cause.
Right.
Why is it? What's going on? Because there were couples after more than 2 decades of marriage, getting divorced, and it continues to be until today. There are couples after a month or less than a month, they come back and we want a divorce. There are people, who still after, Katb al-Kitab or the nikah ceremony, they still did not live together. They want a divorce. And they come and say, can you do something to produce an annulment so that it will not be in the record that they are divorced? Rather, all kinds of reasons. And because this is happening, still it's not by any means scientific, but it's observations that I share with other imams in London, outside London, that it is under the title of lack of understanding what Islamic marriage is all about, and getting married for the wrong reasons.
Right. And that course would help.
Especially young people think that infatuation is love.
Right. That's what we learned in the popular culture.
Yeah. And yesterday at the walima that I attended, I told that young couple, that you may think that you love each other now. Wait until you sit together 50 years from now. Then you will discover that your love was an exponential thing, that when you become 50 years old, you'll say, oh, we thought that we love each other when we started to meet.
Right.
No, love, should increase, not decrease. People joke about it now that, thank God I took a break from my husband. Thank God I took a break from my wife. When it should not even be a joke. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called it sakina, which is tranquility. that after a long day of being on a roller coaster, whether you are in a profession or a job that, whatever you're doing, when you go home, you should discover that this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created for you, to relax, unwind. When I heard, and I will never forget it, wife, I'm trying to, counsel this couple, and she told me that when he leaves the house, we say Alhamdulillah. When he comes back, we say, Ya Allah, we wish that it was a longer period before he would come home. Talking about her husband, and this is, so if we understand the Islamic prerequisites, the Islamic conditions, you see, I gave this as a 4-hour lecture at the Islamic Center a few months ago, and unfortunately, it was attended by people who were already, good couples, and they came to make sure that they are on the right track. But I hope that it will become a prerequisite for us to perform marriages. But the other imams are worried that what if a couple is in a hurry, they want, are we going to say sorry, go somewhere else? So we have to really make a policy, establish a policy, and go by that policy.
Yeah, I mean, the knowledge that is, setting the course aside, the knowledge that is required in the first place to know about yourself before you start trying to marry somebody else, and your responsibilities and your duties towards that person, is something that we need to be taught as a younger generation. Because like I mentioned, our brains have just been pumped with all this garbage our entire existence growing up here about what love is and what love looks like. And it's and even the stuff you see online, in terms of what the requirements are for a young man to get married or a young woman to get married, and what they need to have acquired in terms of material, things and career and that kind of thing. It's so anti-Islamic. It's so against what we've
and Basil, that reminds me of some people who, I wouldn't call it argued with me when I would go to perform a marriage ceremony, or they would come to me at the Islamic Center to perform a marriage ceremony, when I say that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in an authentic hadith, إِذَا أَتَاكُم مَّن تَرْضَوْنَ دِينَهُ وَخُلُقَهُ فَزَوِّجُوهُ. If you are approached by someone of deen and morality, just, give a positive answer to their request. These are the 2 criteria. And some people say, yeah, Sheikh, that was in a utopian perspective or understanding. What about, if he doesn't have a job? What if he is not educated to match our daughter's education? What if he is from a family that, is basically compatible with our family? What if he is from the same village that we came from? And so they start to enumerate those things that really are taught unconsciously to young people, who, if they are overpowered by their parents' conditions of marriage, I see many young couples, they go outside of Islam. They say, we can't really deal with this. And that's why, marriage for a community like ours, where it is essential. Imagine, even there are people who say, come on, we would like a feasible answer to why a Muslim man can marry a woman from the people of the book. Why can't a Muslim woman do the same thing? Okay, they think about it from purely secular perspective, right. And then they say, talking about equality, now give us an answer. Okay, so it is not really effective, and I say it with confidence after years of dealing with that, to just say, well, because the Quran says so. Already they are challenging what's in the Quran according to their understanding of the Quran, according to their attachment to the Quran. So it's like, an atheist asks you prove that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exists, and then you quote from Ayat al-Kursi. I mean, so I already told you I don't believe in God. So the same thing, we really need to re-examine the institution of marriage from a practical perspective and help our young people make the right choices. We should have more, and I've been, working with the other imams as well. We should have more services where we have our young boys, young men and young women meet each other in a wholesome way. One of the things that in early days I was accused of being a liberal imam, and many people stood in my way and say, you are teaching our kids because in early days they wanted to put a curtain between men and women. Men did not know who are the women in the community, and women did not know who are the men in the community until, we demonstrated that, look what is happening. If the men don't know who the girls are that are eligible for marriage, they are going outside. Right. So you go to the mall, there are no separate malls for women and separate malls for men. Right. So we really need to understand that there are challenges, and maybe one day later on a podcast I can talk about. You see, I put together not too long ago 15 challenges that are facing the ummah. I talked, and some of them were local and some of them were at the global scene. There are real challenges that we are facing now, not the least of which is the LGBTQ issue that parents now after the fact and I say after the fact because there are challenges that they did not take care of early on in the development of the community. And now it's like somebody when it was COVID went to an area that had so many people infected and said, no, nothing will happen to me, and then came out of it with very serious symptoms and now saying, oh, what shall I do?
Where's the vaccine?
Yes. So now we really need to go back a little bit, start from where supposed to start now, and then keep moving forward. Now crying about it, and many parents said, do you advise us to go back from where? I said, go back where? Where? Yeah. There's no safe place on the face of the earth anymore.
Right.
And that's very unfortunate. And that's among the 15 challenges that I put together, that, even what we used to call Muslim countries don't have the what it takes to be called Muslim country.
Right. The values.
Yeah.
So marriage can be a source of great happiness for people. How do I make my marriage the foundation of a great home?
The answer can be to two categories: those who are already married and those who are contemplating to be married. Now, for those who are contemplating to be married, it's the idea of really going through workshops that really will prepare us. It's like somebody who wants to become a skillful surgeon, watching a video on YouTube and then, take the scalpel and can't happen. Okay, you really need to be trained. And for general surgery, after, internal medicine, you have to do 5 more years to become, you need skill. So for people who are not married, I would say be exposed from, I would say, even when they are 16, 17, because it would take, I would say 5, 6 years to become part of you. And that's why parents need to, as part of their responsibility as parents, to teach their children or to put them in that channel, to guide them, to let them learn these things. Now, for those who are already married, it may be a little bit more difficult to undo the damage that happened as a result of malpractice, quote unquote, because there is malpractice in marriage. You know, you have to just go back and love your spouse. There are many people who got married either by being forced to their marriage or, you know, love your spouse, because when there is love, everything can happen. You know, many people pretend, you know, and that is why I would say that love cannot exist with the new introduction to the lives of people. Can you guess what's the new introduction to the lives of people that really destroyed love? Guess. I'll give
Online?
you. What?
Like the comparing to other people online?
How did people get exposed to online?
Oh, through their phones.
Phones.
Right.
You know, I honestly, I'm at this level of saying I'm anti-smartphone.
Right.
Not that I'm anti-futuristic, you know, developments. No. But now it controls people's lives instead of people controlling it.
Right.
So what is happening, and I tell you, my awareness of the dangers of this phone, once, you know, many years back, we wanted to have dinner in my family. And I said to one of my daughters, go and ask your sisters to come down for dinner. So she continued to sit. After 5 minutes, I said, you know, if I mention her name, she would be upset with me. I said, I asked you to call you. She said, I already did.
Yeah.
So what do you mean? You know, she said, I texted them. And that in itself alerted me, even though it was an innocent thing that she said, okay, come, I texted them. I didn't like that. Because later on, I discovered that, you know, this phone is making even couples who want to and this is among, I would say, number 2, after choosing the wrong person to start with. Number 2 that's causing divorce is that there's no more communication face to face.
Right.
You know, they get to know each other by texting each other. And then they come complaining, oh, she answered me in a horrible way. And because, you know, this language, texting language, has no emotions. You know, even it's not the right letters. My children make fun of me because even when I want to send a text, because I have to, I write an essay. Right. And I put, you know, full stop and a comma, and they say, Baba, you know, this is not how you do it. You know, you put 7 if you want this. If you want to do this, you put 3. It means this, it means that. You know, to me, I can't. Right. You know, so if we do not communicate properly, the heart will not beat with love. Mm-hmm. You know, if it is artificial love, you know, it will get rusted very quickly. So I say to those who are already married, learn how to love each other. Have limited time for your phone. Use it only to do your work. Don't, you know, and many people, they are sitting together, but they are not talking with each other.
Right. They're not really together.
They're not together.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would say, you know, live together under the same roof, but don't live virtually.
Mm. Beautiful. I want to ask you, what happens when we get it right? When the marriage works well and things are as they are intended to be, what is the outcome?
The outcome is happiness. And happiness is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned only twice in the Quran. But He mentioned pleasure so many times. There's a difference between pleasure and happiness. Mm-hmm. People think that pleasure is what makes life happy. But once the cause of the pleasure disappears, actually it turns into depression.
Right.
We, once things are working well and we feel that we are happy, even when a major disaster will strike, we continue to feel the happiness of our faith. Consider what is happening now in Gaza, which to many people is located in a different planet, because the stories coming out of Gaza do not feel humanly possible. But people there are happy with their faith. They are suffering physically. They are suffering mentally. But they are enjoying spiritually. Some of them may not realize that spiritually they are happy, because sometimes physical suffering and mental suffering may mask that spiritual, it's the same as before we will see those buds on the trees that we look, they were inside. They were inside. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that in Surah Al-Hajj, mentions that in Surah Al-An'am, there's something inside that only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows about. So that spiritual happiness is the essence of everything else, because physical suffering, once we rest our body, will disappear.
Right.
Mental anguish, once the cause that was there to cause it is gone, what really remains is that spiritual happiness, and that's what we should really focus on. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, I'm providing this for you. If you want to take it, take it. If you don't, you're on your own. And Allah said, وَيَمُدُّهُمْ فِي طُغْيَانِهِمْ يَعْمَهُونَ. Now Allah will say, okay, that's what you want. He will even extend the rope and say, okay, you're on your own, and see what will happen.
Right. Speaking of spiritual well-being and happiness, Umrah, it's been something that I've noticed you've been able to take part in a lot more since your retirement. I have never been. I made a intention to go. I saved the money to go. I had everything ready to go, and subhanAllah, it just didn't work out. And I'm looking forward to that day that I'm able to make a visit. What am I missing?
The invitation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yeah. I don't want to give you a cruel answer.
No, that's okay.
But I have example after example after example that shows people who were ready to the last minute, 2 days before departure. Something happened because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not invite them.
Right.
The invitation does not come from a piece of paper with a stamp on it from the consulate.
Right.
It comes directly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And once that invitation comes, okay, obviously, from a practical sense, you have to work towards that. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala issues the visa. Okay, so what you just told me, maybe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is keeping your visit to a time that you yourself will realize it was the right time.
Yeah, that's what
but for me, I tell you, I have yet to go on a Umrah or Hajj trip where I do not feel that it is as if it's my first visit to the Kaaba or to the Masjid al-Nabawi. Every time I go, I feel, something new is happening. A new feeling is adding to the spirituality that I thrive on. When I am in Mecca and Medina, I feel I'm at home. And I tell everybody when I come back that after I come back, I feel homesick. And, you know, if you check my profile, it says I left my heart in Medina, you know, and because it's a truth. It's not pretending. I honestly, when I go there in the company of the 50 or 100 people that sometimes in Umrah and, you know, thousands in Hajj, and when I feel that people are making life-changing moves, I feel overwhelmed. I feel that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is raising my da'wah responsibility to a level that I'm racing with. I feel that what I accomplish, and I don't go there to accomplish, I go there to experience, to grow more. But every time Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives me a Umrah gift, a Hajj gift, where I see the accomplishment, you know, among the people who go there, and I say, Ya Allah, Alhamdulillah, that you gave me another chance and that's why now come July 27th of this year, you still have a chance, by the way, to register. You know, I am with Sheikh Tawakkul,
Yes,
taking a group of youth, because you know, Sheikh Tawakkul had the privilege of retracing the hijrah route of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam with his teacher, Professor Abdullah Al-Qadi, who is the expert on seerah. So he accompanied him, and he knows places in Medina that I'm still discovering. So this time we are going together, putting our expertise together to really give the youth, you know, a focused, you know, chance to learn about Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You know, I have studied the history of the Kaaba from the time of Adam until now. I have volumes that I really study and research. So I wanted to share that with the young people and develop their identity all over again by calling that a trip, Journey to the Source. Journey to the Source. So, you know, this is what Umrah does. When we really pray every prayer, either at Al-Masjid Al-Nabawi or at Al-Masjid Al-Haram, when we, you know, have a chance as young people to go to Ghar Hira, to the cave, that you discover something. You know, I might as well mention it to you, because every time I mention it, it's fascinating. And say, it's impossible. You know, Ghar Hira is like the distance between you and me. That's how big it is. But one thing about Ghar Hira, you know, when Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam sat in it, he did not know the significance of the Kaaba, other than being something that the Arabs of Mecca venerated and sanctified because of the times of Ibrahim. But, you know, if you go to the end of Ghar Hira, there's a little opening between the rocks at the end. If you look, very narrow, very small opening, you look through it, you see the Kaaba in a straight line.
Subhanallah.
Which tells you the direction of Ghar Hira is in a straight line with the Qibla. And it wasn't the Qibla initially for 16 months. Yes, it was meant to be the Qibla by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala since the time of Adam. But for 16 months, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as He told us in the Quran, He made it to Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. Okay, but you know, these are some of the things that when young people see them, it just boosts their spirituality and you know, we talk about why we do tawaf in a counterclockwise. Why 7 times? Why the black stone? Why 2 raka'at behind Maqam Ibrahim? Why do we make that, sa'i between Safa and Marwa? Why not from Marwa to Safa? Why 7 times again? Well, all of these things that the majority of people do them because they are rituals. They don't understand. But when we go on what we call Umrah trip, we examine all of these things. And people blame me for going so often there. It's because, I cannot leave my heart there for so long without going and connecting with it.
Yeah. If you're a young person listening to this and you're interested in going, don't make the same mistake I did. The reason I haven't been able to go was simply because it wasn't, and I'm ashamed to say this, but it wasn't my priority when I was younger. And now I'm sitting in a position where I have the financial means, but I don't have the time. And so you have these other things that come into your way. So if you're a young person and you're looking to go to Umrah, don't delay.
Absolutely.
Because you might end up exactly where I am now, where I'm waiting for the next chance, inshallah, and I do intend to go. But your life, the time you have now as a young person is unlike any other time you'll ever have again.
Absolutely. And, if I take it one step further, there are people who say, I'm still young to do Hajj. They wait and wait and wait until they have knee problems, until they have mobility problems in general. And now they have to use wheelchairs to do the sa'i and the tawaf and this. Nothing can be equal to doing it when you have the vigor of moving and feeling the reason why you are doing it the way you do it.
Right. SubhanAllah. I want to close with talking about Jido Munir.
Yes.
So did you ever expect yourself to be a YouTuber?
No. No.
As we go through this journey.
I still don't call myself a YouTuber. No.
Okay.
Because that may give the false impression that a YouTuber, as the term now is understood, is somebody who's looking after fame, who's looking to get financial gain because, they heard that, the more followers you have, the more a chance of getting something, and people will point to you. If that is the case, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not to let me reach that.
Ameen.
But if the intention is to reach the world with my da'wah, then absolutely.
Right.
I make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala all the time that, I do feel that I have a global message. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala willed so far because of my dentistry and my doing my da'wah when I was practicing dentistry part-time, and now I'm doing it full-time after reaching this age. I still feel that I want to reach the world with my style of da'wah, my understanding that I developed over the years. And Islam with Jido Munir and Islam with Uncle Munir, and I had on TikTok a program 1 minute only called Think About It.
Yes.
So I will tell a story and then at the end I'll say think about it. And it was amazing how many people really followed that. But again, my resources, all of this was done through one of my daughters, who now is a very busy mother, who doesn't have the time to really do the kind of special effects. And so basically, I am still working. Actually, before I came, to the podcast, I was sitting with 2 brilliant people who helped me at the Islamic Center during Ramadan, and now they want to do something for the YouTube and the Instagram and all of these, whatever they call them, outlets. Excuse my language. I continue to use the wrong terms for things online. So hopefully, I will be able to, continue with that. Now, about Jido Munir, Alhamdulillah, I have 8 grandchildren. And, one of them kept asking, she's at an age, she's 6 years old, she's at an age where she asks so many questions. And my daughter, who's her mother, the one who does the, all of the programming for me, she said, why don't you do something with her? So it started the idea of Islam with Jido Munir. And, I was surprised how many people connected with me, and they said, please do that more often. And I would love to do it on a regular basis, but again, it's not feasible now, but hopefully it will be
Inshallah.
feasible. So that's,
I always tell people so Omar does all the editing and the content and all that kind of stuff.
Can I borrow
This
him
is
from
the
you?
easy part. Yeah, this is having the conversation is the easy part. He has all the hard work.
Okay, I'm going to borrow him from you.
Yeah, there you go, Omar. You're gonna on the new channel.
All I have to do is talk to his father.
Yeah,
I know his
exactly.
father.
Exactly. I want to ask you about the creative outlet. I mean, dentistry, maybe I could be wrong, but it doesn't seem like a very creative pursuit. I could be wrong. But it gives you an opportunity now, like with creating this stuff online, it gives you an opportunity to be a little bit more creative. Does that feel odd to you, or is that part of what you've always liked but never really had the chance to partake in it?
If there's anything I contributed when I was in dentistry, is my use of the art and science of dentistry.
Okay.
And I used it in my capacity when I was a student at U of T. I was the class president in 2nd, 3rd, and 4th year. In 1st year, I was still new. I did not come forward. But my nature is that, I like, whenever I have some energy, I like to put it into proper use. So I came forward, or I went forward to become the class president, and I started to introduce things that class presidents never thought of before, because a class president before me was a person who organized pubs.
Okay, yeah.
Friday night,
Right.
they all go to the wrong place and they, lose their minds. And, that's all what the class president. I did all kinds of things. We had outings, we had exchange visits with other schools of dentistry. We had, art exhibits. We had, and I called it the art and science of dentistry. And, what I used to do, be creative. And many of my colleagues used to say that whenever they would see a tooth that I had restored, they said we could tell that this is restored by Dr. El-Kassem. Other colleagues used to joke that all you needed to do that is left is to sign your initials on the, I used to reform the cusps and the shape. Basically, it will look like it used to be before. So I used to enjoy that. So that I would say the art of dentistry is in how I would communicate with my patients. I never, because it's an art. Many, whether physicians or dentists, don't have good bedside manner. They just frown, they talk abruptly, they throw the outcome of their diagnosis on their patients. They, and patients get terrified of them. They, I used to take pride in my anesthetic, and my needle, as they call it, was painless, patients, because there's an art to that. A needle does not need to be painful. if you put it at the right angle, the right shape, the right everything. So dentistry to me actually helped me being creative in many ways. And that's why now the term that people use, in a generic way, thinking outside of the box.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I operate. I never restrict myself to a classical way of thinking. I always like to think outside the box and say, okay, why don't we do this? Why don't we try that? Why don't we, and that's why I'm racing with myself all the time.
Right. I think it's a great place to leave a message to the listeners and the people that are watching this. We live in a world now that is completely different than it was even 5 years ago, I would say.
You may say a year ago.
Yeah.
That's how fast it's moving.
It's moving. And so we are in need of people to use their creative abilities to solve problems in a way that has never been solved before. And so if you could leave our listeners with a message about using that creativity in serving others, what would you say to them?
I would say knowledge as you acquire at school, and by school I mean high school, college, university, is just the base. Never be content with the base. What distinguishes a structure from others is what they call the frills on it, what is so unique about that structure. Mm-hmm. Anybody can build a high rise, but if you put in it something that others will recognize from a distance even, then this is a sign of creativity. So I would say to everybody, to a mother who thinks, her motherhood can be developed differently by making her baby's room, look different, so that it will excite the sensory capabilities of that baby, seeing things around, putting, give you an example, one of, very young, 3 years old grandchild I have, he cannot sleep without listening to Munir El-Kassem. Okay. Mm-hmm. I got him from Mecca, a kind of light, mm-hmm. where Munir El-Kassem is reciting Quran all the time. And sorry, it's not Munir El-Kassem, it's Belushi, the one from Yemen. Okay, Belushi. Something happened to it and it stopped working. He was so sad. And mm-hmm. when I asked him what happened, he said, Belushi is asleep. Belushi is asleep, he's not waking up. Jido, can you make him wake up, please? So it's something that now he's connecting Quran, even though through the recitation. I don't know if you heard Belushi, he has very calming voices, but children love him. Okay. So a mother can be creative, a father can be creative, a lawyer can be creative. You are creative in this podcast. I tell you, when I saw that, I said, Allahu Akbar, this is something that we did not witness in London. I saw outside of London, but your knowledge of people in London and how you are doing it, and this is creative. The way you put the Palestinian cause in such a visible way made everybody not against what they are seeing and hearing, but they are really curious to know more. So I said many Palestinians tried for decades to come together and form the Canadian Palestinian Social Association of London until your generation came forward and you became so creative by having every day I go to my WhatsApp and see, okay, the to-do list. What are the things that I can contribute? And I share it with others who don't have it. And so this is creative. So I say, don't stop at what you learned at school. Build on it.
Absolutely.
That's my message.
It's a beautiful message.
Thank you.
Jazakallah khair. I mean, this has been a conversation that I've looked forward to for a long time. And I wanted to thank you again for joining us and imparting some wisdom on us. Inshallah, we use it and we carry that baton that you're passing to us.
Inshallah, I hope so.
In an appropriate way.
I hope so. And I feel more, comfortable after conversing with you closely that inshallah this will happen. Inshallah. And, we always ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to continue to guide us on the straight path.
Ameen.